The great chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as High Arbiter Velix rose from his seat. His insectoid body towered over the other delegates, and his 4 arms spread wide as he prepared to speak. Around him sat representatives from 37 species, each one watching with curious eyes. But something was wrong. Everyone could feel it. The human seats were empty. Velix clicked his mandibles together, a sound that echoed through the vast hall. "Distinguished delegates," he said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of tradition. "We gather today for our annual summit. However, I must address an urgent matter. Earth's delegation has not arrived." Whispers spread through the chamber like fire through dry grass. Delegates turned to look at the empty seats where humans usually sat. Those seats had never been empty before. In the 40 years since humanity joined the Council, they had attended every meeting, every summit, every minor gathering. They were always there, always talking, always trying to make friends. Delegate Moron of the Silith hegemony leaned forward in his seat. His silver skin reflected the chamber lights as he spoke. "High Arbiter, when did we last receive communication from Earth?" Velix paused before answering. 72 standard hours ago." The whispers became louder. 72 hours was a long time. Humans were known for their constant chatter. They sent messages about everything. They wanted to trade. They wanted to share culture. They wanted to explore together. They never stopped talking until now. Morin felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had studied humans for many years. He knew them better than most aliens did. And he knew that when humans stopped talking, something was very wrong. "High Arbiter," Morin said carefully, "may I ask what happened before the silence began?" Velix shifted uncomfortably. The question was direct, and the answer was not pleasant. The Council voted on the matter of human expansion into the Outer Rim territories. The vote was not in their favor. "You mean we imposed sanctions on them?" Morin said flatly. "We punished them for settling empty worlds that nobody else wanted." "The territories were unclaimed but not uncontested," War Minister Krath growled from across the chamber. The massive reptilian warrior showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "Humans expand too fast. They needed to be reminded of their place." "Their place?" Morin repeated. He remembered the last time he saw Ambassador Park Yuna. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. She had stood in this very chamber and pleaded with the Council to reconsider the sanctions. She had presented evidence that humans had followed every rule, every protocol. She had been calm and reasonable. The Council had ignored her, and then she had changed. Her eyes had gone cold, and her voice had become flat. Morin could still hear her final words before she left. "We came in peace. We offered friendship. You answered with contempt. There will be no more words." Then she had walked out. Her staff had followed her. Their ships had left Orbital Prime within the hour. And since then, nothing. No messages. No complaints. No attempts to negotiate. Just silence. "Distinguished delegates," Velix said, trying to calm the growing noise in the chamber. "I am certain this is simply a diplomatic gesture. Humans are emotional creatures. They are upset, and they are expressing that by withdrawing temporarily. They will return to negotiate." "They always do they?" Morin asked quietly. Scholar Ilix, a small being covered in blue feathers, raised her wing to speak. She was the Council's leading expert on new species, and she had written many papers about humanity. "High Arbiter, I must express concern. My research shows that humans have a unique psychology. They are what we call persistence predators. They do not react to problems with immediate aggression. Instead, they wait. They plan, they prepare, and then they act decisively." "So they are planning to attack us?" Krath laughed, a deep rumbling sound. "Let them try. Our combined fleets outnumber theirs 10 to 1. They are the youngest species in this council. They have been in space for less than 300 years. What can they possibly do to us?" Ilix ruffled her feathers nervously. "War Minister, the humans have a saying. They say that it is not the size of the fight in the dog, but the size of the dog in the fight. What does that mean?" Kraft demanded. I am not entirely sure, Ilix admitted. Humans have many strange sayings, but I believe it means that determination matters more than strength. Kraft waved a clawed hand dismissively. Determination does not stop plasma cannons. Morin closed his eyes and thought about history. He thought about how the Council had treated humans since they arrived. At first, everyone had been curious about the new species from the small blue planet. Humans were friendly and eager to learn. They wanted to trade and share knowledge. They worked hard to prove themselves, but the Council had never truly accepted them. Humans were called the young ones as if they were children. Their proposals were often ignored. Their trade goods were taxed heavily. Their colonies were restricted to the poorest sectors. And whenever they complained, they were told to be patient. They were told that respect had to be earned over centuries, not decades. The humans had been patient. They had followed the rules. They had earned their place 100 times over. And the Council had responded by punishing them for settling worlds that nobody else wanted. Morin understood. Now why Ambassador Park's eyes had gone cold. He understood the silence. The humans were done being patient. High Arbiter, Morin said, standing up. I strongly suggest we send an envoy to Earth immediately. We should apologize for the sanctions and open new negotiations. Velix made a dismissive gesture. That would show weakness, Delegate Morin. The Council does not apologize to junior members. The humans will calm down and return to the table. They have no other choice. Morin looked at the empty human seats one more time. He thought about Park Yuna's final words. He thought about the silence that had followed. I think, Morin said slowly, that you are wrong. I think the humans have made a choice. And I think we are not going to like it. The chamber erupted into argument. Delegates shouted at each other. Some agreed with Morin. Others supported Velix. Kraft banged his fist on his desk and demanded that the Council show strength. But underneath all the noise, Morin could feel something else. It was quiet and cold and growing stronger. By the minute dot it was fear, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, 300 human warships were moving into position. Their communications were silent. Their weapons were ready. And on the bridge of the flagship, Admiral Kim Do-yeon stood with his hands behind his back. Watching the stars, he was done talking. The Earth Command Center in Seoul was quiet. Hundreds of officers worked at their stations, but nobody spoke above a whisper. Screens covered every wall, showing the position of every human ship in the galaxy. Green dots moved slowly across star maps, sliding into place like pieces on a game board. Admiral Kim Do-yeon stood at the center of it all. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion. His uniform was perfectly pressed. His hands were steady. He had been a soldier for 40 years, and he had waited for this moment for most of them. Commander Shin Ji-woo approached him with a tablet in her hands. She was younger than the admiral, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. She had served under him for 15 years, and she knew him better than anyone. Admiral, she said quietly. All fleets report ready? 312 ships in position across sectors 7, 12, and 15. We have complete coverage of all major council trade routes. Kim nodded slowly. And our special assets? Shin allowed herself a small smile. The council doesn't know they exist, sir. As far as their intelligence shows, we have only the ships they have seen. Good, keep it that way. Kim turned to look at the main screen. It showed the galaxy spread out before him, with council space marked in blue and human territory in green. The green areas were small compared to the blue. Humans were newcomers. They had been in space for less than 3 centuries. The other species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, but time was not everything. Intelligence. Chief Hwang Soo-jin hurried over from her station. She was a small woman with glasses and nervous energy. Her job was to listen to alien communications, and today she had been very busy. Admiral, she said, I am intercepting massive traffic between council homeworlds. They are scared, sir. They did not expect us to go silent. They keep asking each other what we are planning. Let them wonder, Kim said. There is more, Wang continued. The council is arguing among themselves. Some want to send envoys. Others want to prepare for war. They cannot agree on anything, Kim nodded. This was expected. The council had always been slow and divided. Each species cared only about its own interests. They spent more time fighting each other than solving problems. It had taken them 6 months to agree on the sanctions against humanity. It would take them just as long to agree on a response. By then, it would be too late. Captain Baek Tae-young's face appeared on a side screen. He was the commander of the dreadnought Sovereign Will, the largest ship in the human fleet. His square jaw and steady gaze made him look like he had been born to command warships. "Admiral," Baek said, "the Sovereign Will is in position. All weapons are charged and ready. The crew is waiting for your orders." "Thank you, Captain. Hold position and maintain silence." "Yes, sir." Baek paused. "Admiral, permission to speak freely?" Granted. "The crew is eager, sir. We have waited a long time for this." Kim understood. Everyone in the fleet had a story. Everyone had a reason to be angry. For decades, humans had tried to be good members of the council. They had followed rules that were designed to hold them back. They had paid taxes that were meant to keep them poor. They had accepted insults that were meant to keep them humble, and they had suffered losses that the council had refused to acknowledge. Kim thought about his own son, who had died in a border incident 12 years ago. A council patrol ship had fired on a human freighter, claiming it had entered restricted space. 23 people had died, including young Lieutenant Kim Junho. The council had investigated for 2 weeks, and then declared it an accident. No punishment, no reparations. No apology. Just silence. Kim had learned then that words meant nothing to the council. They only understood power, and so he had begun to prepare. "Captain Baek," Kim said, "tell your crew that their patience will be rewarded. Soon the galaxy will know that humanity is not to be ignored." "Yes, sir." Baek's face disappeared from the screen. Shin stepped closer to the Admiral. "Sir, the council still believes they outnumber us 10 to 1. They think we are bluffing." "Let them think that," Kim said. "They have never bothered to count our real strength. They see only what we show them." This was humanity's greatest advantage. The council saw humans as young and weak. They did not look closely at human shipyards. They did not count the factories on Mars and the asteroid belt. They did not know about the research stations hidden in deep space where scientists built weapons that the galaxy had never seen. For 30 years, humanity had prepared for this day. They had smiled and talked and played the role of the eager junior member, and all the while, they had built an army in secret. "We have also been trading with the fringe worlds," Shin added. "The species outside council control. They are happy to support us. They have no love for the council either." Kim allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. The council thought they controlled the galaxy. They did not realize that many species resented their rule. Those species had been happy to trade with humans, to share technology and resources. The council's arrogance had created its own enemies. Wang looked up from her station again. "Admiral, the council is sending an envoy ship to Earth. They want to talk." "Turn them away," Kim said. "No communications, no meetings. Complete silence." "Yes, sir," Wang sent the order. Somewhere in space, a council ship would arrive at Earth's border and find a wall of human warships blocking its path. It would send messages asking for permission to enter. It would receive no reply. Eventually, it would turn around and go home. And the council would understand that humanity was serious. Kim walked to the window and looked out at the city of Seoul. Millions of people lived down there, going about their daily lives. They trusted him to protect them. They trusted him to make the council pay for decades of disrespect. He would not let them down. "Commander Shin," he said without turning around. "Initiate communications blackout across all human space. No signals in or out. We go completely dark." Shin nodded and began giving orders. Across the galaxy, human stations and ships shut down their transmitters. Beacons went silent. Networks went offline. In minutes, humanity disappeared from the galactic communications grid. To the council, it would look like humans had simply vanished. The fear would grow. Kim watched the sun set over soul and thought about his son. He thought about Ambassador Park Yuna and her cold final words. He thought about every human who had been insulted or ignored or killed by a council that saw them as nothing. Those days were over. Now, he said quietly to himself, we wait. And then we act. The stars came out over Sol, cold and distant. Somewhere among them, alien worlds were waking up to the news that humanity had gone silent. Leaders were demanding answers. Military officers were checking their defenses. Ordinary citizens were looking up at the sky and wondering what the humans were planning. Nobody knew, and that was exactly how Admiral Kim Do-yeon wanted it. 1 week had passed since humanity went silent, and the Galactic Council was falling apart. High Arbiter Velix stood at the center of the great chamber, but he no longer looked powerful. His 4 arms hung at his sides and his mandibles clicked nervously. Around him, delegates shouted at each other. Some demanded action, others demanded patience. Nobody agreed on anything. Order, Velix called out. We must have order. Nobody listened. Delegate Morin sat quietly in his seat and watched the chaos. He had warned them. He had told them that humans were not like other species. He had begged them to send an apology, to open negotiations, to show some respect. They had ignored him. Now they were paying the price. 3 envoy ships had been sent to human space during the past week. All 3 had been turned away without a word. They had arrived at the border and found human warships waiting for them. The humans had not fired. They had not sent threats. They had simply blocked the way and said nothing. The silence was more frightening than any threat could be. Scholar Ilix pushed her way through the crowd of arguing delegates. Her blue feathers were messy and her eyes were wide with fear. She had spent the entire week studying everything she could find about humanity, and what she had learned terrified her. High Arbiter, she called out. High Arbiter, please, I must speak. Velix looked down at the small scholar. What is it, Ilix? I have completed my analysis of human behavior patterns. You must listen to me. We are in great danger. The chamber slowly became quiet. Everyone turned to look at Ilix. They could see the fear on her face, and it made them afraid too. Speak, Velix said. Ilix took a deep breath. Humans are persistence predators. On their home planet, they used to hunt by chasing animals for hours and hours until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. They do not give up. They do not stop. Once they decide to do something, they do it. We know this, War Minister Krath growled. What is your point? My point, Ilix said, her voice shaking, is that humans only go silent when they have already made a decision. They are not waiting for us to negotiate. They are not hoping we will change our minds. They have already decided what they are going to do. The silence means they are preparing to act. The chamber erupted into worried murmurs. Delegates looked at each other with wide eyes. Some began to understand what Ilix was saying. That is speculation, Krath said, but his voice was not as confident as before. You cannot know what they are planning. I know humans, Ilix replied. I have studied them for 20 years. They are not like us. When they are angry, they do not shout and threaten. They go quiet, they plan, and then they strike with everything they have. Morin stood up from his seat. She is right. I knew Ambassador Park Yuna. She was always talking, always negotiating, always trying to find compromise. When she stopped talking, I knew something had changed. The humans have given up on diplomacy. They are preparing for something else. War? Velix asked. Perhaps, Morin said. Or perhaps something worse. Perhaps they will simply cut us off. Refuse to trade with us? Refuse to share their technology? Refuse to help us when we need them. Krath laughed, but it was a nervous sound. We do not need human help. We have been traveling the stars for thousands of years before they arrived. Have we? Morin asked. Human medicine has saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Human engineers have improved our ships and stations. Human food production has fed hungry worlds. We need them more than we want to admit. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew Morin was right. Humans were creative and hardworking. They solved problems that other species could not solve. They had become important to the galactic economy in just 40 years, and now they were gone. There is something else, Ilix said quietly. Something I discovered in my research. The humans have been trading with the fringe worlds. The species outside council control. This caused a new wave of shock. The fringe worlds were considered primitive and unimportant. The council had ignored them for centuries. But if humans had been building relationships there— How much trade? Velix demanded. I do not know, Ilix admitted. But it has been going on for at least 10 years. The humans have been building alliances that we knew nothing about. They have friends we have never met. Resources we have never counted. Krath slammed his fist on his desk. This is unacceptable. The humans have been deceiving us. No, Morin said coldly. They have been surviving. We treated them like children, so they found adults who would respect them. This is our fault. Velix raised his arms for silence. We must take action. I will send a personal message to the human leader, Admiral Kim Do-yun. I will apologize for the sanctions and offer new negotiations. It is too late for that, Ilix said sadly. We must try, Velix insisted. The message was sent within the hour. Velix composed it himself, choosing his words carefully. He expressed regret for the sanctions. He praised humanity's contributions to the Council. He asked for a meeting to discuss the future. The response came the next day. The message was returned unopened. Velix stared at his screen in disbelief. The humans had not even read his apology. They had simply sent it back. The message was clear. Words no longer mattered. That night, 3 Council border stations went offline. The stations did not explode. They did not send distress signals. They simply stopped transmitting. When patrol ships arrived to investigate, they found the stations intact but empty. All personnel were gone. All records were erased. It was as if the stations had never existed. Human ships were seen in the area. They did not attack the patrol ships. They did not speak to them. They simply watched from a distance with dark, silent hulls. The message was clear. We can reach you whenever we want. We can take whatever we want. And you cannot stop us. Panic spread through council space. Citizens demanded protection from their governments. Governments demanded action from the council. And the council had no idea what to do. Morin sat alone in his quarters that night and looked out at the stars. He thought about all the times the council had dismissed human concerns. All the times they had called humans young and impatient. All the times they had refused to treat them as equals. We created this, he thought. We had 40 years to make friends with humanity, and we chose to make enemies instead. Somewhere out there, human fleets were moving through the darkness. They were silent and patient and ready. They had tried words for 40 years, and words had failed. Now they would try something else, and Morin was very afraid of what that something else might be. 2 weeks of silence ended with a single transmission. High Arbiter Velix was in his private quarters when the message arrived. He had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were dull, and his movements were slow. The stress of the crisis had broken something inside him. He was no longer the proud leader of the Galactic Council. He was just a tired old insectoid who had made terrible mistakes. His screen lit up with an incoming signal. The source was the human flagship Sovereign Will. Velix's hearts began to beat faster. Finally, the humans were ready to talk. He accepted the transmission immediately. Admiral Kim Do-yun appeared on the screen. His face was calm and expressionless. He wore his uniform with perfect precision. Behind him, Velix could see the bridge of the warship, filled with officers working at their stations. Everything was quiet and professional. High Arbiter Velix, Kim said. His voice was flat. I am transmitting the terms of humanity's demands. You have 48 hours to accept them in full. There will be no negotiation. There will be no extensions. There will be no further communication until you respond. Velix leaned forward. Admiral Kim, please, let us discuss this. I'm sure we can find a compromise that satisfies both sides. The Council is willing to reconsider the sanctions and— You are not listening, Kim interrupted. I said there will be no negotiation. These are not requests. These are demands. You will accept them, or you will face the consequences. The screen changed to show a list of 5 items. First, the Council will pay full reparations for all human deaths caused by Council negligence over the past 40 years. This includes military incidents, border conflicts, and accidents that were never properly investigated. The total amount will be determined by human accountants. Second, all trade restrictions on human goods will be dissolved immediately. Humans will have the same trading rights as any other Council species. Third, the Council will recognize all human territorial claims in the Outer Rim. The sanctions will be cancelled, and humans will be free to settle any unclaimed world they choose. Fourth, the Council will make a public statement acknowledging that humanity was treated unfairly. This statement will be broadcast to every world in Council space. Fifth, the human representative will be given permanent veto power over all Council decisions. Humanity will never again be outvoted on matters that affect human interests. Velix stared at the list in shock. These were not reasonable demands. These were the terms of a conqueror. If the Council accepted them, humanity would become the most powerful species in the galaxy. Admiral Kim, Velix said carefully, these demands are very extreme. The Council cannot simply 48 hours, Kim repeated. Your time is already running. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Velix sat in silence for a long moment. Then he called an emergency meeting of the Council. The great chamber was in chaos when he arrived. Delegates had already seen the demands. Some were outraged. Others were terrified. War Minister Krath was on his feet, shouting that the Council should attack immediately. This is an insult, Krath roared. The humans dare to give us orders? We will crush them. Our fleets will burn their worlds to ash. Our fleets cannot even find them. Delegate Morang shouted back. Human ships are positioned around every major homeworld. They moved into place while we were arguing. If we attack, they will strike back before our forces can organize. You exaggerate, Krath said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. Scholar Illich spoke up from her seat. He does not exaggerate, War Minister. I have analyzed the sensor data. Human fleets are within striking distance of 17 Council homeworlds. They have complete tactical advantage. If we fight, we will lose. Krath sat down slowly. His face showed disbelief. How had this happened? The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be young and inexperienced. How had they outmaneuvered the entire Council? Velix stood at the center of the chamber and looked at the frightened faces around him. He had led the Council for 30 years. He had always believed that wisdom and tradition would guide them through any crisis. But wisdom and tradition had failed. He had failed. We must respond to the humans, he said quietly. We have 48 hours to decide the fate of our civilization. We cannot accept these demands, one delegate said. It would make us servants to humanity. We cannot refuse them either, another replied. They will destroy us. Perhaps we can negotiate, a third suggested. Offer them half of what they want. Morin shook his head. You still do not understand. The humans are done negotiating. They talked to us for 40 years and we ignored them. They have no more patience for words. They want action. The chamber fell into argument again. Hours passed. Delegates proposed ideas and shot them down. Some wanted to fight. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to flee to distant colonies and hope the humans would not follow. But through it all, one truth became clear. The Council had no good options. They had created this crisis through decades of arrogance and disrespect, and now they had to face the consequences. Captain Beek Taeyong stood on the bridge of the Sovereign, will and watched the chaos unfold. Intelligence Chief Wang Sujin had tapped into Council communications and they could hear everything. The alien leaders were panicking, arguing, blaming each other. They were not working together to solve the problem. They were falling apart. They are weak, Commander Shin Jiwoo said. She stood next to Captain Beek, her arms crossed. They have numbers, but they have no unity. No will to fight. Beek nodded slowly. That is why we will win. They saw us as children for 40 years. They never realized that children grow up. He thought about his brother, who had died on a freighter 12 years ago. He thought about all the other humans who had suffered because the council did not care about them. Those people deserve justice. And justice was coming. Admiral Kim's voice came through the ship's speakers. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Kim. The council has received our terms. They have 48 hours to respond. Hold your positions and maintain readiness. If they accept, we will have peace. If they refuse, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Every human in the fleet knew what would happen if the council refused. Back on Orbital Prime, Velix stood alone in his quarters and looked at the human demands one more time. He thought about his legacy. He thought about the thousands of years of council history. He thought about all the species who had trusted him. To lead them wisely, he had failed them all, but perhaps he could still save them. Perhaps he could accept the human demands and prevent a war that would destroy everything. It would be humiliating. It would end the Council's dominance of the galaxy. But at least his people would survive. He began to compose a message to Admiral Kim. His hands were shaking, but his mind was clear. The age of Council supremacy was over. The age of humanity had begun. 6 months had passed since the Council surrendered to humanity's demands. No weapons had been fired. No planets had been bombed. No lives had been lost. The humans had won their war without fighting a single battle. They had used patience and silence and fear. And those weapons had been more powerful than any fleet. The galaxy was changing. Ambassador Troy Minji stood at the podium of the Great Chamber and looked out at the assembled delegates. She was a woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her black hair and a face that showed both strength and kindness. She had been chosen carefully for this role. Humanity needed a representative who could be firm but fair, who could command respect without inspiring hatred. Distinguished delegates, she said, her voice clear and strong. 6 months ago, humanity made demands that many of you considered extreme. We asked for reparations. We asked for trading rights. We asked for recognition of our territories. We asked for a public apology. And we asked for veto power over council decisions. She paused and looked around the chamber. Some delegates met her eyes. Others looked away. They were still adjusting to the new reality. You accepted those demands, Minji continued. And I want you to understand why we made them. We did not want power for its own sake. We did not want to dominate the galaxy. We wanted to be treated with respect. We wanted to be seen as equals. For 40 years, we tried to earn that respect through hard work and cooperation. It did not work. So we were forced to demand what we could not earn. Delegate Morin listened carefully from his seat. He had expected the humans to be arrogant after their victory. He had expected them to gloat and punish the species who had mistreated them. But Ambassador Troy was not gloating. She was explaining. Humanity does not want to rule over you, Minji said. We want to work with you. We want to build a galaxy where all species are treated fairly, where the young are not dismissed by the old, where differences are celebrated instead of punished. We have veto power now, and I promise you that we will use it wisely. We will not abuse our position. We will not become the thing we fought against. She stepped back from the podium. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly Morin began to clap. Other delegates joined him. The applause was not enthusiastic, but it was genuine. The aliens were beginning to understand that humanity was not their enemy. They were beginning to hope that the future might be better than the past, on Earth. Fleet Marshal Kim Do-yeon stood in his office and watched the broadcast of Ambassador Choi's speech. He had been promoted after the crisis ended, given the highest military rank in human history. He had achieved everything he set out to achieve. The Council had paid reparations. Trade restrictions were gone. Human colonies flourished in the Outer Rim. The galaxy knew that humanity was not to be underestimated, but Kim did not feel triumphant. He felt tired. He walked to his window and looked out at the city of Seoul. Life was normal down there. People went to work and school. Children played in parks. Nobody was thinking about fleets or wars or galactic politics. They were just living their lives, trusting that their leaders would keep them safe. Kim thought about his son, Junho, who had died 12 years ago. He thought about all the humans who had suffered because the council did not care about them. He had wanted justice for those people, and he had gotten it, but he also knew that power was dangerous. The council had once been fair and just. Over centuries, they had become arrogant and cruel. They had started treating younger species as inferior. They had stopped listening to complaints. They had forgotten what it felt like to be weak. Humanity could not make the same mistakes. Kim turned on his communication screen and addressed the people of Earth. His face was serious, and his words were careful. "Citizens of Earth," he said, "today marks 6 months since the Council accepted our demands. We have achieved a great victory. But I want to remind you what that victory means. It means responsibility. It means that we must be better than those who mistreated us. We must use our power to help the weak, not to crush them. We must listen to complaints, not ignore them. We must remember what it felt like to be dismissed and disrespected, and we must never make others feel that way." He paused and took a deep breath. We did not want this power. We wanted partnership. We wanted friendship. The Council gave us no choice but to take what they would not give. But now that we have it, we must use it wisely. If we become tyrants, then our victory means nothing. We will have won the war but lost our souls. The speech was broadcast across human space and beyond. Many aliens listened to it with surprise. They had expected humans to celebrate their dominance. Instead, the human leader was warning his people not to abuse their power. It was not what they expected from conquerors. Perhaps, some thought, the humans were different after all. Captain Beek Taeyong stood in a quiet garden on Earth, looking at a memorial wall. Thousands of names were carved into the stone, humans who had died in incidents that the Council had ignored or dismissed. His brother's name was there, near the middle of the wall, Lieutenant Kim Jin-ho, lost in the Keller incident. Age 26, Beek reached out and touched the carved letters. He had spent 12 years waiting for justice for his brother. Now justice had come. The Council had paid reparations. They had apologized publicly. They had acknowledged that Junho and the others should not have died. It did not bring Junho back. Nothing could do that. But it meant something. It meant that his death had not been forgotten. It meant that the galaxy finally cared about human lives. "We did it, brother," Beek said quietly. "We made them listen." On Orbital Prime, former High Arbiter Velix sat in a small apartment and wrote in his journal. He was no longer the leader of the Council. He had resigned in shame after the surrender. Now he was just a private citizen trying to understand what had gone wrong. "We thought silence meant weakness," he wrote. "We thought the humans needed us more than we needed them. We thought that our age and experience made us superior. We were wrong about everything. The humans taught us a lesson that we should have learned centuries ago. Respect is not given to those who demand it. It is earned by those who offer it freely. We did not offer respect to humanity, and so we lost their friendship. We have no one to blame but ourselves." He put down his pen and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships patrolled the trade routes that the Council once controlled. Human ambassadors met with species that had never been part of the Council. Human engineers built stations and colonies and outposts across the galaxy. The universe was changing. And humanity was leading the change. Ambassador Choi Minji returned to her office after her speech and found a message waiting for her. A new species had been discovered on the edge of known space. They were primitive by galactic standards, just beginning to explore beyond their home system. They were nervous and eager and full of questions. They reminded Minji of humanity. 40 years ago, she recorded a response to the new species. Her voice was warm and welcoming. "Greetings from the Galactic Council. We are pleased to make contact with your people. We want you to know that you are welcome in this galaxy. You will be treated with respect and fairness. Your voice will be heard. Your concerns will matter. We know what it is like to be new and uncertain, and we promise that you will not face the challenges that we faced. The galaxy is better now than it was, and we will work to make it better still." She sent the message and sat back in her chair. Through her window she could see the stars stretching out to infinity. So many worlds, so many species, so much possibility. Humanity had won its place in the galaxy through strength and silence. But they would keep that place through wisdom and kindness. They would not forget what it felt like to be dismissed, and they would never let another species feel the same way.